Hello everyone, I hope you're well. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm back again just to create another card, and once again I'm going to use my Auricula stamp. I'm really enjoying using it. So it's TE2, and what I've got is I'm going to be using a piece of Pink Frog smooth card, 5 inches square. I've got a little mat 5 1/4 inches square and a card blank 6 inches square. So we're going to use those, and I'm going to start with the Auricula. We'll just take the floral, and it's quite a good size as well, that floral, because sometimes you can say A7 stamps, but that's a really good size floral. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with strawberry VersaFine Clair. So let's take the strawberry. Just make sure we get that bit of the floral. And then I'm going to add little touches of the Portobello just to make a few sort of darker touches. And then I'm going to take my kitchen roll and just sort of remove a little bit of the text. I'm going to begin by adding this. So this will be the image that is in the foreground and uppermost. So, and if you're unsure whether you've added the ink, just tilt your acrylic block and you can see the actual stamp sort of shiny, and you can see that you've got your ink on there. Now I'm stamping straight onto the white card, and even though it's super smooth, it does have some, you know, it is more porous than stamping onto the Distress Oxide background like I did before. Okay, so we've got our image now, just stamped beautifully, as you can see. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to take my little mask, as I did before. There we go. So we'll take this mask, we'll add this over the top like so. We can just remove this, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my fern stamp, which I didn't get out, which is good. So I'm going to take TE3. So I'm going to take my fern stamp, TE3. And if you just want to add a little bit of something else, the fern is just wonderful. So let's take the fern stamp. I think I'll put it on an A7 acrylic block just so I've not got too much bulkiness everywhere. There we go. And then I just need to decide on the colours. And I'm going to use VersaFine Clair. So I'm probably going to use Verdant. Or am I going to? No, I'm not going to use Verdant. Let's use Grass Green, some of the new colours, and Avocado. If you're not sure of the colours that you want, then just test those onto a piece of white card. So let's start with the avocado. So we'll just add the avocado to our fern stamp. So just make sure that's on there, and then just think about your composition. So I'm going to add the ferns here, and obviously these will appear behind the floral, because the first stamped image, which was the Auricula, is the image that will appear in the foreground. And as I'm using that VersaFine Clair, these are permanent inks, so that'll be perfect, especially when I want to add some colour to the floral, so it'll work quite nicely. Gets more difficult as you stamp more over your mask to see where the mask goes, adds to the interest. I'm going to colour the floral in, and I've got all these ink pads on my website, and let's start with the avocado. Once again, I don't think I put any grass green on there, so we'll put the avocado on there. I was getting too engrossed. And then we'll put a little bit of grass green on here. And then I'm going to add, let's add these down here. I love how the fern looks when you stamp it in a colour. Always looks so lovely. There we go. So let's add, now I can't see where the, is it that way? Maybe that way. There we go. So I'm now going to take the smaller fern. Let's take that smaller one. So we've got the little fern. And we'll take the avocado again. A few little touches of the grass green. And then I'm just going to add, so you've got that there, so let's add one. And that's not going to take much stamping at all. Let's try and leave this the same way. That's it. Just leave it like that. So we've got that sort of odd number. So let's just move these out of the way somewhere. And now I can colour my image and not worry too much. Well, I don't have to worry at all that the colour's going to move, because that's a permanent ink pad. So it's not going to move at all. So I'm going to colour with my Auricula pens just to give some brightness. I'm going to colour this in red, obviously. So we want reddish brown, and I think it's carmine. There we go. So I'm just going to use two colours, and I have carmine, which is 318, and my darker colour, reddish brown, 422. And the Auricula pens are beautifully vibrant. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take the reddish brown and just add the reddish brown. And I can go all the way round, because that pen should stay wet enough. Actually, leave the lids off, and then I can use the carmine, and we'll just go pen to pen. Nothing complicated at all there. Then I'll just use a wash of the carmine. So that then sort of becomes my third colour, because it's sort of a wash of that colour. And then I'm just going to blend the colour out. And the good thing is, because you have used your permanent ink pad, but you've used it in sort of the same tones as the colouring, the detail is still there. So it works really nicely. So just picking up that wash again. And just blending that out. I'm using that fine brush now because I'm addicted to the fine brush, because it's a game changer. It really sort of works so well. Just to blend out that colour. And by now, you know me, you know that I'm going to add a little bit more detail. So I can just use the Auricula darker pen, the reddish brown, and just bring in a little bit more of the detail, just with the darker colour. And again, as you will know by now, it's all about adding the layers. So I'm going to take the carmine and I'm going to add another layer of that colour. And this time I'm just going to do one petal at a time. And I will leave a little touch of that white just so that that pops a little bit more. Again, I won't add the touches of white just yet because it's not going to work on that wet surface. I must admit, I do love a little bit of the colouring. So let's just, and it just adds that much needed brightness, and we'll just allow that just to rest a few moments, and then we'll just give our brush a little bit of water and a rinse. So I'm going to take my grey, as I've done plenty of times before, and just to make that pop a little bit more, I'm going to add a little bit of the grey. Now, don't add too much of the grey. Just add quite a bit of grey at the base here of the flower and then blend it out. So sort of blend that out. If it's not moving for you, that could be the card. It could be that you've not got enough water. Try adding water first and see if it'll work that way better for you. Because the minute you add the water, it instantly starts to move. And again, like anything, it takes time just to build up those layers. Let's just, and I'm not using too much. You know, I'm not putting too much down before I start to blend out. There we go. So just do one area at a time and concentrate on that area before you move on. And if you're not getting enough movement, just go back in with a lighter version of this, just to remove and soften any of those edges. So you can just go in with a lighter version. So I want a little bit more darkness just around the floral. So I'm going to take some more of that again. And when I go in a little bit dark, I'm going to load my brush with the grey, and then I'm going to go in a little bit darker. And just again, just do that one area first. So just a small area at a time. And then we can easily sort of remove any lines afterwards with a paler version of the colour. So I'm just going to go round just to give that a little bit more definition. So I'll just blend that out. Just like so, just a little bit darker. Now you can see, if you've got lines, just water it down a little bit more, your colour, so it's even paler, and then just come in and add a paler version of the colour, just to blend that out a little bit. There we go. And we'll just clean that up. And then I'll just take my small brush. What did I just do with that? Don't put it down. And then if I just flick a little bit with my tiny brush, a little bit of water just on that background, I'll get a few little sort of bleached out areas, and we'll just let that do its thing, just so that you can see. And I want to add a little bit more depth to the floral, so we'll spend a little bit of time adding a little bit more depth to the floral. But I want to add some background stamping, and I'm not going to worry that we've got that moisture on there, so I'm going to use my VersaFine Clair Morning Mist. Now, am I going to use, do you know, I might use the Auricula. So on the Auricula, we've got the text stamp that says, often displayed in individual pots on shelves. So we'll use that background stamp, and the poor thing is so dirty at the back. Let's just give that a clean. That's what I love about these stamps, so hard wearing. There we go. So if I stamp while the moisture's still there, some of the text will sort of be faded out. So I'm going to add a little bit of text just here and there. And I love it when you use text that coordinates with the image that you are displaying. So it talks about those plants in individual pots, and it's sort of apt for the image, if that makes sense. So I'm just adding some of that text around there. Like so. And you don't have to have perfection in your text, because you're just creating a background, so it really doesn't matter. It's just your background for now. There we go. We've got a nice sort of flow. And whilst you're doing that, you're just giving the background time to rest. Let's just add that back. And if you pick up stamps like me, just make sure that you're aware that you could get black ink or grey ink onto your fingers, so just be aware of that. So there's still lots of moisture in this card, so I'm just going to go in and I'm just going to add a little bit more of that darkness, and I'm just sort of adding a little flick. I'm just going to add a little bit more darkness. Just spend a little bit of time adding a little bit more depth to your floral. And you can go round sort of the edges so it's a little bit darker, just where the flowers sort of overlap each other. Just add a little bit more darkness. There we go. And then we're going to go in with the carmine, just to add another layer of that colour, and you're just sort of blending pen to pen. Gives a little bit more vibrancy, a little bit more, never mind a little bit more, it gives a lot more depth when you add layers of that colour. And when I've got products in my cupboard, I do like to make sure that I use those. So I'm going to come in again with another sort of wash of the carmine, because then you want that to sort of have a little bit more depth, just a little touch. And what we're doing really is we're sort of tickling the edges where those lines are, just to make sure we've got nothing too harsh. It looks much more, looks richer and deeper. So I'll just add a little tinge of the wash just to the inside. So just add a little bit of that wash to the inside. And we're obviously going to add touches of white to that card as well. But it really does pop a little bit more. And it'll be a lot better when we add those touches of white. But the touches we can add of white is we can add the touches of white to our fern. Just because the recipient will see those touches of white, which will work really nicely. So just add, and it is worthwhile just taking a little bit of time just to just add a little bit of white. Now, there is absolutely no point in me even trying to add the white to those. I need to dry that. So let's give that a little bit of a dry. Even a little waft of the heat tool will make a big difference, especially when you've soaked the card as much as I have. Let's just do it from the back. There we go. That will just help a little bit. So let me just convince the card that it needs to go that way. Let's grab our quirky birds. Just need a scrap of card. Take our quirky birds. Oh, like I was going to put that on the card then. Hilarious. So I'm going to stamp my little bird. In my Nocturne ink. I will also lift the card up. I need to show you the bleached out areas. Let me see if I can show you. There are sort of bleached out areas in there. In real life, you can see sort of little dots of oxidization, and it's just lovely. Those touches of white are going to make a huge difference. Now what I'm going to do, because I'm using the water to colour the bird. Now when you use water, the cardstock obviously breaks down a little bit, so it becomes a little bit more fragile. So then when you colour, obviously, because I haven't got time to let it dry properly because I'm demonstrating, it's a little bit more difficult then to cut out because your card is softer until you let that dry or you give it a thorough dry. So sometimes when you're demonstrating, you need to do things in a different order than you would at home just so that they work. So I've cut my legs out first because that makes it so much easier. And then I'm going to colour afterwards. Normally I colour first and then cut out, but the only reason I'm not doing that this time is because I'm using the water reactive pigments, you know, the Ecolines. If I was at home, I could colour it and then I could just let it dry. Not that that happens most of the time, because when I'm engrossed in, I just get engrossed and get on with it. So I'm going to use the darker colour, the reddish brown, just around the edges. Look at that wonderful colouring knot. Then to come in with your carmine, just as your second colour. We'll just use a wash then. Pick up that wash of colour. Blend the wash of colour out. Just so that we haven't got those harsh lines. And then whilst it's still wet, I'm going to go in again. Just to add another layer of that colour. And it will wick out because the card is still wet. I'll go in with my carmine. Just add. And sometimes you can use dots to add colour, and it sort of gives textures to like animals. So I'm just going to leave a little bit of a white area because that helps to make that pop. Again, you could spritz that Auricula pen that I left on the surface there, and you could just dab that onto another piece of card. I'm going to add my little bird here. Obviously we've got those white areas to add, those white touches, and really if you wait for it to dry, you're making it so much easier for yourself. And what I will do is add the white and everything will start moving. But that's why it's easier when you're at home. You're not recording a video. It just makes it easier for you. So I'm going to add my touches of white now. And I sort of go in very gingerly, very sort of gently, just so that I don't add too much white. And I can just see that I'm happy with what I'm doing. And it's surprising how a touch of white just brings everything to life. And what I also like to do is, I also like to let it dry even more. So normally I would give, if I was at home, I'd give it another sort of waft of the heat tool. Let's do it from behind as well. And then I would add another layer of the white. So again, sort of layering the white. And you should know me by now. You know that I'm a faffy. And one of my favourite things is the little sort of faffy bits at the end. I just love doing them. Let's just add a little bit of white around here. And every time I colour, I like it because I'll just do it a little bit different. It's part of the fun. So now you wouldn't try and add your white bits to the bird with the glue still wet. But again, you know me by now. I'm going to do it anyway, just so I can add the touches of white. Then I'm just going to add a little bit of grounding to my bird. And then I'm just going to make it a little bit darker around the bottom. Did I tell you that this fine brush is a game changer? Have I said that much? I don't know whether I've said it very often. Just might need to say it again, just a few more times, just in case you didn't realise that it was a game changer. Just thought I could mention it a few more times. Actually, I'm now going to go round the whole floral a little bit more. Just a little bit darker. Oh, I've now just chucked that on the floor. But this is what I love about creating, is you don't have to rush. You can just take your time. So I'm just doing a little sort of section at a time. Now be aware, if you touch that red, that reacts with water. So just be aware of that. Not that it matters if you touch it a little bit. So you can see I'm sort of doing a little area at a time. And you can see also the difference from your Inktense Shiner ink, the grey, compared to the Distress Oxide ink. But what the Distress Oxide ink has done, it's laid down a base of that grey. So this looks a lot better when you add to the background, because you've already got that grey there. So it just works quite nicely. And if you'd got half a brain cell, which I don't have, then you would have done this before you added the bird. But sometimes you think of these things and think, oh, I'd just like to add, well, Tracy does anyway. And let's face it, how many times do I do it? Lots. There we go. So we can, because we've got the grey on there already, it sort of blends out quite nicely and works beautifully. Again, you need to make sure you've got good quality card. And now that really sort of stands out for me. And there's still some moisture on there. If you use your Posca pen and you've got moisture in your background, it'll sort of wick out. That's sort of a nice touch as well. So you just want to add a little bit of your splatters. There we go. Let's clean our area. Now, if you don't want the Posca pen to react too much with your background, just give it a waft dry. So then you haven't got that moisture on there that's reacting with the background. Let's just heat the back a little bit more. Oh, couldn't turn my heat tool off then. So let's just... So if you just sort of dry your Posca pen, it therefore doesn't stay wet. So the longer it stays wet, obviously it'll absorb some of the colour from the background. So just remember that. Poor bird doesn't know what's happened to it. It's been moved around that much. Right, so I'm now going to add this to my black background. And I would still sort of, after the card has been placed onto the mat, I would still go in and add sort of reiterate those touches of white again, because that's me all over. But now my Posca pen is dry, I can sort of bend my card, I can put my hands over the card, and it doesn't matter. So I can just make sure that it's just sort of grabbing onto everything. There we go. Just lovely. And I would go back in and sort of redo the white areas again. I'm then going to just add this to my white card blank, like so. So we'll just add that to the white card blank. Let's add that. And obviously if your card's a little bit bent, I often add a little bit more glue. But obviously I've got glue that hasn't got too much water content, which is really good, and it grabs hold quite quickly. So it hasn't got too much of that water content. And I know I haven't done the little grounding below my bird. Oh, I've got an itchy eye now. So we just need to add a little bit that grounding. Let's just move our card out of the way, and then we can take the Auricula stamp again. Just grab our little bit of card, stamp this in the black, and then we can cut this text up, or you can leave it as it is. It's entirely up to you, however your sort of card feels to you. Again, if you use your fingers to remove that stamp, just make sure you don't have any black ink all over your hands, which I often do. And do I actually do? Let me just check. Now I want it cut up. There's certain ways I have to turn my card just to do it better. Let me just see if I do want it like this. Actually I do, yes, I don't want it cut up. I'll explain why. Now on my previous card, I sort of cut the sentiment up and it worked for that. But for this one, if I cut it up, it might just be a little bit too much. So I'm just going to have it here, just so that I've got the fern peeking through as well. No, can't pick that up. Just add that there. Now if I'd cut it up, I'd add lots of bits sort of, which worked for the previous one, but on this one I just want it on its own. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of shading. Where would I be without this Inktense pencil? That's what I want to know. Just blend that out. There we go. Just so that you can see that, and it just looks lovely in the red. It really works beautifully. And I'd go back in and add more of those touches of white if I wanted to. And again, like I did with the other card, where's my pen? You can go in and just add little touches of the darkness, just where I've added the touches of white, just to give a little bit more dimension. And I'm going to say now that card's done, or else I'm going to keep faffing, but I would go in and add more touches of white if you wanted to, but just so that you can see that. And I would also add an insert as well, maybe with the bird or with the floral. So I hope you've enjoyed that, and I hope you'll give it a go. Love to all, and I'll see you all soon. Bye for now.